am thrilled to welcome the fall with the first in-gallery talk at R&D Company. And this is a special time for everyone because we are back home, we're back to the office, we're back to the galleries, and we all know that we live history and that this moment is going to be remembered forever. And with me, Johnny Swing, with his first New York solo show at R&D Company. And Johnny is a master craftsman. He is a sculptor and metalsmith who lives and works in Vermont. And before I ask you anything, I just want to say that I remember years ago dining at the Four Seasons restaurant, and here it was, his coin bench in this magical, iconic mid-century Miss Van der Rohe and Philip Johnson space, which was at the time considered the world's most beautiful restaurant. And I was thinking to myself, look at this piece and how it complements this environment and makes it perfect and brings this contemporary sensibility to the space. So hi, John, how are you?
Wonderful. It's excited to be here. Thank you for doing this.
Do you like that curators talk about your work and write about your work?
Of course. I like the different perspectives. I mean, I certainly live a little bit of a vacuum in Vermont, so having any additional perspective on how the work is perceived, beyond, I get to often have a piece in a friend's restaurant in the neighborhood, and I get to watch people be on it, play on it, sit on it waiting for their seats, but to hear it conceived of in other ways is really nice for me. Yeah.
You know, your work is very much centered on the object and on the making. You are a maker. So I want to ask you, what does passionate craftsmanship means to you?
I like to make things. I've always been a little bit nervous about there being too much focus on the actual process because I really want people to be involved in the whole object. I'm a very good welder. I'm a licensed structural steel welder, and often early on with my early work, people go, "Oh, look at your beautiful welds." So I ended up starting to cover the welds with paint or with auto body filler because I didn't want the work to be about the welds. So, I think that with this work, I mean, they're nicely made, but they are easy to perceive as objects unto themselves. I mean, if you want to investigate further, there's some pretty magical welding to look at. I mean, each one of these pieces has, 20 to 30,000 welds.
And we're going to look at them soon, closely. But because you use American coins, you use quarters and nickels and pennies and dollars, there is a very strong American iconography. You are an American artist. So, and you tell me a story. What is your story?
The story is that these things that sit with us every day that people often take for granted are really little sculptures themselves. They're really amazing objects, like you're holding a little piece of art every time you hold a coin, and how beautiful they are. And really how magical. And like the fact that we've given value to a piece of metal is amazing. And we have them in our pockets, we have them in our cars, they just pile up everywhere. And the girl at the bar for me recently said that she took her change to the bank, and she's like, I probably took $600. I said, I think you probably took more like $2,500. And she was right. She's like, yeah, it's $2,800 and change. So it's.
Where do you get them in the bank?
I do get them in the bank. I do prefer, my bank knows this, that I prefer to get not federally local coins. I get coins that have been in circulation because some of this is about the fact that I'm taking these things that have traveled so many places and putting them all together, and say if there's 3,000 coins in this piece, and each coin is going anywhere from 10 to different locations. There's so much different things so many stories that they all have to tell. It's almost like that Curtis Blow of 10 million stories.
So how many coins are in this installation? Do you know? Do you ever count?
My guess is 12, 14,000, 16,000.
Okay. And you work in Vermont. You've lived in Vermont for how many years?
25 years. We moved out of the city in 95 when our first baby was 6 weeks old.
Vermont is all, to me, Vermont is all about nature. And you live in nature, you work in nature. Is your nature, can we see the trace of your nature in your work?
It's a great question. I actually am almost in conflict with nature. I really noticed early on with displaying the work that if I actually showed it outside, I was competing with nature, and I learned really pretty quickly you can't beat nature. Nature is so naturally beautiful, and even if it's the most subtle things as a hillside or a cloud or just how dirt forms, if it's natural, you can't mimic it. So often my work displayed on harder surfaces, ends up holding up beautifully. I mean, I'm not trying to cheat nature. I'm not trying to steal from nature. The shapes are very natural, but they're still handmade. They still come from my mind. So I'm not going to win that battle. I love nature. Nature wins all the time.
And nature in Vermont is magical, and the fall is coming. So you have the best foliage, I think, in the country.
We have the best foliage, but what's interesting that you live in the country year round is that every season is gorgeous. Like even mud season, which we call stick season or whatever. It's got this feeling of excitement that things are going to come alive, and that there's this reemergence. The winter, when winter comes, everything turns into coin furniture. You cover everything with like 8, 10, 12 inches of snow. All of a sudden, everything looks like coin furniture to me. So Vermont, the country, living in the country has been really, really great for me. I loved my time in the city, don't get me wrong. I've got nothing against New York. New York is magical. New York is important. New York is a place where you can be anything you want to be. That's the best lesson you can learn in New York.
And the exhibition is in New York, and you started working with metal so many years ago, and you have like amazing skills. And I want to show something about what I really find compelling about your work. And I want to, first of all, look at this piece. So this is an installation, right? But you can also take it apart. So why don't we start looking at some of the pieces in this exhibition? And I want to just ask you for a second, because we are going to change cameras. Yes. Yes. Oh, okay, great. So I want to ask you about this piece. It's one installation. It's made of what, 7 pieces?
7 pieces that all fit together.
But then each one of them can stand by itself. So show me.
So take this piece for example. It lifts out of here, and the backside is all has its structure that keeps the shell in form, and then the legs are coming off of that structure.
So that's what I wanted to say. I mean, don't lift it. It's very heavy. Not to you.
One hand.
So, one of the things I love about your work is really the sort of almost contradiction between the surface and the structure. But yet, you see those two entities and they come together to like an amazing composition. But I want to ask you whether there is a difference. I know this is obviously very planned, the surface.
Right.
What about the structure? Is this also planned?
No, it sort of goes. It goes as I plan, but the work is. I mean, I draw it out underneath on each piece,
and then I put the structure where I think the structure is needed the most. This one with this ledge that sticks out, but there's still a place where people can sit, needed to have a lot of truss work over in this area so it doesn't flex.
Oh, okay.
And so it can, and this shell down here, which is much more sculptural and decorative, needs much less support, so the structure can be less down there.
And then can you say something about how you structure this? How do you start?
It's in after the coins are welded, it's in the shell.
No, but wait, but first you make a mold.
Right, first I make a shape that I like, that's comfortable, that's visually pleasing to me, and then that gets cast in concrete, and then the work is welded inside these concrete shapes that sort of look like little swimming pools. And that way the welds are on the backside, the concrete acts as a heat sink, it acts as a place where I can hammer the coins back flat because there's such a thing called weld pull. When the two coins are welded together, one coin will bend up. We have to hold them down. So basically I make a shell first. Once that shell is welded, then that structure is put on the back and that holds it into place. It's you know how like an egg is strong, but you know, you just have an egg shell, there's not much to it. So it really needs this structure added to the back.
So if you make addition, this part is identical, but not the
Not the understructure, or even necessarily the coins, because the coin pattern is always different. They're never started necessarily exactly in the same place or laid up in the same way. So no two look alike. And they look alike, they're not specifically the same.
You know, I want to tell you, Johnny, when I looked at this before and these pieces were you put it apart, I was thinking to myself, which one I love the best. And I don't really know because I love them. I love them all, actually. And they're all so different and they come together. Let's look at this table.
Wonderful.
So this is a really interesting table. I also want to ask you, when you look at the coins, they are pressed.
Yes.
When I saw you work, the early work, you really see the coin. What happened?
I had this idea for years in the studio of making the coins, manipulating the coins, changing them sort of back to my childish act of putting coins on railroad tracks, as many of us reminisce doing. But it makes the coins into sort of like such an abstract, magical thing. It almost makes them primitive. It almost makes them sort of the way, like back to a found object, even more found than finding coins. And it's two-part effect. One, it's made the image a little bit more ghost-like, but also it's changed the round shapes from not being round anymore. Most of my previous coin furniture.
So they're not really round, and I think that you can see it here. Look, so you start here, and this is straight, but then when it comes here, it's not straight anymore because they are not round, but they're also are they more like shiny?
They're a little bit smoother surface, so yes, they shine up a little bit more, and the images are a little more ghost-like. You really have to sort of like dreamy. You have to look, you have to search, you have to investigate, and you know they seem to me more magical.
So what do you do? Do you take each coin and you press it one by one by yourself?
Well, it's one of my favorite jobs because there's a lot of thinking to do with this process, and so when you get a job, there's a job you sort of can like, you know, as long as you put your fingers in the roller, you're all good.
So it's like yoga, right? And everything that we see here, the new furniture that you show in this show, it's all made either in nickel or in dollars.
Dollar coins.
So let's look at the dollar coins. Because here you see something very different. First of all, the color
is so rich.
So this is brass?
It's the dollar coins, which are the presidential coins and Sacagawea, are brass-clad copper. So these are, I'm not sure why they're not solid brass or why they're not solid copper. Somehow or another.
But we don't see copper. This is very
Right, so
gold.
it's brass. It's brass.
Brass.
It's the way if you were on a yacht and it had just been polished. This will accumulate a lot more gold color. I'm almost referred to often as gold coins. They're sort of. I'm like, but they're not gold, so it's not going gold.
But they look so goldish, but then when you look underneath, it's black. Yeah, can you show us?
So this is the same piece that we looked at earlier over there. So with the gold color, it had to be a darker base, because if it was the lighter base, it becomes like a two-tone and they're almost in conflict with each other. So I darkened the stainless. Everything is still stainless steel, and in the process of doing the stainless steel, I ended up with this really pretty patina down here with this greenish color that's sort of almost.
Well, how did this happen?
Well, the washing process is just stripped any existing oils off of the coins and activated the surface, so that immediately happened.
This is gorgeous.
Isn't it pretty?
So this is
It's like I pulled it out of the water.
You have green, gold, and black.
I know.
This is truly magical. Can we look at that over there?
Yep.
Which piece do you want? I have this one.
This is sort of the kookiest one.
This is a part of the installation.
Yes.
So you did one installation in nickel and one in one.
I did.
With dollar.
So I sort of, having had to work at the restaurant where a lot of people sit in, and my mind immediately goes to like, how many people can actually sit on this? Because I've seen this one piece of furniture mine. I think I counted like 11 people sitting on it at one point. 3 different families waiting for their tables at a restaurant. So I sort of picture like, sit on it.
Like this or like that?
Like, sit like that. If you're in a hotel lobby and you're a family and you're like mom, dad, and the kids, like you can all sit and wait for your room. Like, I'm 180 pounds. I'm sitting out on the edge of this. It's not, it's perfectly fine. Literally 4 people can sit on this. It's a little crowded, but if you need a place to sit, here you go. Whereas if you want to be by yourself, you can put your elbow back there and put your leg up here. It's like it's almost has an ottoman on it. So
and I want to tell you, for my yoga body, it's so comfortable. There is something very like soft about it. It's hard. You would think metal, and it's not, but it is comfortable. Can we see the other one? How about this one?
So this was the first piece.
Is this nickels?
These are nickels. This is the first piece that we made in the squished coins, and it's. I really wanted this feeling of pressure and movement, and the look of it was meant to be where the legs, the surface was so heavy that the legs were pushing through the surface of the table, and that's what the bumps are about. And
Can you show the underneath?
I'll fold it this way
Oh,
towards
okay.
the wall. This was a direct sort of derivative of the penny chair, where the legs come down sort of tree limb-like, and it's really part of my search with the work was how to integrate what holds these shapes up in the air to be as magical as the shapes themselves. Like it's almost like a Brancusi question. How do we get these things held up there without it just being a pillar, without it just being just stagnant, or without it taking the energy of the surface? So this one has, in my mind, a really nice,
really nice. And here I think this is a great example on how your two entities, the surface and the structure, how they work wonderful together. Let's look at this piece here. So, how many people can sit here?
Surprisingly enough, you'd find out on the edge, which is almost like a shelf where, if you're by yourself, you might stick your drink here or your book here, but if you can sit there, it'll hold you, you're fine. This was one of the pieces that really made me realize that the whole set of 7 worked nicely, because this one on its own sort of floated or flew or had its own grace or its own power, or like it was headed somewhere, and it didn't need its other 6 ones with it to define it. It's almost the one that's most like a river stone or a piece of lava or like something natural that just came and evolved and still is a piece of furniture.
I really feel your passion, but my last question is not going to be about the passion. It's going to be about how collectible these pieces are. So I want to invite somebody that I consider as the expert on collecting design, James Demitis. Please. Hi, James. Hi.
Hey everybody, thank you for coming too. Us at R & Company really appreciate you guys visiting us this afternoon virtually, and welcome to our opening.
And James, so you have known Johnny for a while.
Yes, I've known him for 12 years now.
12 years. I remember the first time when you were at Sotheby's and you sold his bench, which came from the collection of Robert Isabel, the famous event designer that you did. And I want to ask you what makes John's work collectible?
Well, that story itself is a classic one, because when a work like an iconic nickel couch first appears at auction, the auction experts out there in the world are always going to be conservative in how they price it. And so I priced it very, very conservatively at the time, $15,000 to $20,000, I think it was. And also it was coming from an estate of Robert Isabel. We had a mandate to sell his collection. And the piece sold for well over $100,000. And it was this watershed moment for what I like to consider the contemporary generation of craft makers. And
so you said there is a strong secondary market, which is number one, when we speak about what makes 21st century design collectible, number one, does it have a secondary market?
absolutely. And again, Johnny is a mature artist, and it sounds funny when I say that, but he is an artist. He is absolutely at the peak of his powers, but he has been working on this long-term project of furniture now for 30 some years. So he has a really strong track record of numerous new forms. His work is in multiple public collections and institutions. His work is on every continent of the world except for Antarctica. I mean, it is something where, it takes a while for a secondary market to develop and support the primary market for an artist. And the thing that I keep coming back to is the insane amount of technical skill and artistry that goes into the making of this work. This new work that we're presenting here is the product of literally thousands of hours of work over multiple years now.
And if we had more time, I would have myself analyzed it, but we don't have time because I want to take a couple of questions from the audience. So Johnny, please, let's sit here.
And I think, guys, I have the first question for you when you sit.
Oh, the first question.
Some of your fans, Danielle, your admirers want to know. They want a bit more description of of how does it feel? I think the sensuality of it.
Oh, so that's for me. That's a question to me. How it feels.
Let me get out of the way for that.
No. I just want to say that I feel there's something very soft and magical about it, because you think about, oh, this is metal, this is hard. Yes, it is hard. Maybe because it's gold, and maybe because it's so polished. Maybe that makes you feel a little bit polished in it. Do we have another question?
We do, and I'm going to come around here in this format. I have a question from the great fabricator Sean Kelly in Kansas City, and he wants to know from you, Johnny. Johnny, have you ever in the past or in the future want to or have created this kind of work on an architectural scale? I assume he means a monumental scale.
I haven't, mostly because the process at this point is so limiting in terms of making the forms in the first place and then casting them in concrete. It would take a really big commission to take on a larger, more environmental project like that.
But one day you will.
Yes, I'm not opposed.
He's open to it, everyone. Do we have another question?
We do, again, for Johnny, of course, and the question is, someone online said, it certainly appears as though Harry Bertoia was your first great influence. I don't think that's necessarily the case, although he has played a role in your career. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of your artistic, influences over the years?
My mother was a painter growing up, and I certainly was shown and got to share and see work. She was a fan of Henry Moore. She was a fan of Jean Arp. I don't think these things happen in a void, although I'm certainly arrogant enough to hope so. But it's, it can't be truthful, because I was sort of working East Village when all of that was happening. I certainly was influenced by graffiti and by bubble letters. I was influenced by music. I was influenced by advertising, the shapes of milk pouring onto cereal. I really wanted that feeling of action, of water, of dripping, of things moving through space. That was sort of, Brancusi was certainly a big influence. Calder.
And I just want to add that you started working in New York City in the 80s. And this is exactly when you saw downtown, you worked downtown, when you saw the emergence of what we call the art furniture. So I think that you really started working with this generation in the 80s that recognized, that merged art and furniture. Do we have another question?
Yes, we do, from a woman named Maria on there, and I think I know what she means. She says to you, Johnny, do you enjoy your work, and which one the most? So perhaps she's saying, of all of these pieces, which one is your favorite?
Let's go.
Which one is my favorite? It's like
Your father.
I love all my children. Hopefully they're listening. They know that. Alba, Eli, I love you both. Do I love the most difficult one? I mean, this is like my angry child right here. It's the hardest one to weld. It's the structure is like a puzzle putting it together. It's sort of is the one I love the most, the one I hate the most. I don't know. I love them all. I'm so arrogant that I love everything I'm making when I'm making it. But yet again, I heard the term work, in there, which work do I like the best? They're all fun, but they're all work. It's good work. I have the best job in the world.
Okay, wow, that's a great question. That's a great answer.
I do.
Good question.
I have the best job in the world. I really am. I'm one of the luckiest people I know.
So
and I never forget that.
Yes, you are. You are lucky because you have passion and you have compassion. And Johnny, it was my honor to do that and to welcome everyone to our company and to the fall 2020. Thank you for being with us.